Business Bytes. We have a couple of gentlemen here to talk about MSPs and insurance and some of the value adds there. We have Sagar and Dave. Sagar, maybe we'll start with you. Kind of give us an introduction to who you are, your business, and I said maybe dive a little bit deeper into the next layer down of who you were before the current professional. Sagar, go ahead, take it away. Talk about who you are and why we're talking today.
Thanks, man. Keith, appreciate the opportunity to be on Business Bytes. Always love chatting with fellow MSP owners in the industry and just to chat. So I'm based in Chicago. I've been in the tech space since 2005, so coming up on 20 years now. 15 of those years were spent running my own managed services provider in the Chicagoland area. We were a national organization. And for us, the focus was really on three things. One was help desk, like most MSPs, right? That's where we excelled. We focused a lot on cybersecurity on the preventative side to prevent breaches from happening. And then we started doing a little bit of like generative AI stuff towards the end. Like, how do we use Copilot and ChatGPT? I exited that company about 18 months ago, and I am now fully immersed in the cyber insurance space. So currently, I'm co-founder and the MSP chief at Rhone Risk, and we're a risk management company. We partner with MSPs with that lived MSP knowledge, and we help build risk programs so that your customers get access to not only the right cybersecurity controls, but also insurance, incident response, recovery, everything that security requires in a modern world. And Keith, I got to tell you, man, it's been super, super fun to have both sides of the experiences, because I've had the 2 a.m. calls when our ConnectWise was telling us that there's been a security incident and just talking clients off a ledge. And then now just being on the other side of that as a vendor with that experience, man, it's been really fun to share that with, and I still consider myself an MSP in my heart. So I still say, fellow MSP owners, just, I think really greatly benefit from this information.
Yeah. So when we talk about insurance space, maybe tell us a little bit about like the types of insurance, the types of coverages that you guys offer, and what got you interested in it? I mean, what made you take this route? Kind of an interesting curve, yeah. So tell us a little bit about. Tell us
unusual
about
path, right?
How'd that happen?
So I would say this goes back to like 2020. COVID, if you remember, and the insurance that we sell.
The world changed, right?
The world changed, right?
Yep.
Cyber liability insurance and then professional liability. So think of error and omissions insurance. That's the two focuses for us. 2020 was a weird year for everybody, especially for MSPs, because we had customers, Keith, that were telling us, buy whatever VPN license, whatever RDS license, whatever remote desktop services that we need, because we got to go remote in a week. So we were pulling in like 18-hour days, 7 days a week, just to get people converted who were resistive to remote work before. And then, the pandemic completely changed everything. In that moment, what a lot of MSPs and a lot of companies ended up doing inadvertently, because you just had to move at light speed, was dilute their security posture, right? We had really strong security for people in the office, but then when they're working from home, it's not the same level of security, because we have to turn some things off to move
especially if you're in a covered environment, PCI,
especially if you're
HIPAA,
in a covered
spaces,
absolutely, right? And especially in those regulated, environments, it became very challenging.
They didn't hit pause on HIPAA for any of that stuff.
We were going.
They didn't say the world's changing, we're going to put up pause. No, you still have to meet HIPAA.
You still have to keep going. And what we realized was a lot of our customers started asking us, hey, I know we're working remotely now, but our cyber insurance renewal is here and it's a 6-page application. Can you fill it out for us? I'm like, man, this is taking us like an hour and a half to do, and we're doing like 12 of these a week, right? So we started thinking, I'm like, we're giving away this knowledge to some insurance broker who doesn't know the MSP industry, who I've never had a relationship with, and I'm transferring this important part of the risk conversation with some insurance person that I don't even know about, right? And then unfortunately, we had a couple of clients that had some security incidents come up. Thankfully, we were able to address them and slow them down. But when we had to go file a claim to at least get some of the capital to
Mm-hmm.
restore, a handful of computers, it was just a very challenging process. So I thought to
Mm-hmm.
myself, I'm like, man, if I'm going to be an MSP and if I'm responsible for my customers' cybersecurity
Mm-hmm.
well being, I can't give away the most important part of it, which is the risk transfer to some broker that I don't even know. So call me crazy, but I said, you know what? I'm going to go and study. How hard can it be to become
Okay.
a licensed insurance person? I was wrong. It's
Mm-hmm.
hard to do
Yeah.
this stuff. So in late 2021, early 2022, I went down this path of getting licensed, and I went and finally I failed the first time because it was very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Passed the second time, and then eventually got to a point where I said, I have so much conviction on this insurance stuff. Maybe I hang on to this to see if there's a way to
Mm-hmm.
build that into my MSP. And then opportunity came knocking. We ended up having
Mm-hmm.
the chance to sell the entire MSP to a strategic buyer.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm back with that idea of cyber insurance that was on the shelf all these
Mm-hmm.
years to then deliver that product to MSPs because it's
Mm-hmm.
so needed right now in the world that we live in
Mm-hmm.
today.
So, um, Rhone Risk is not an insurance carrier. You
No.
help MSPs find the right carrier, or you help them. Maybe describe that a little bit about what Rhone
Yeah.
Risk does in that space. It's intriguing to
Yeah.
me.
Of course. Rhone Risk. Rhone is spelled Rhone,
Hmm.
rhonerisk.com. We
Hmm.
are technically an insurance broker.
Okay.
So we are licensed nationwide in the US and in Puerto Rico. So, Keith, anytime anyone comes to us and says, we'd love to get cyber insurance, we first validate their security controls because we're technical. We understand application
Hmm.
whitelisting versus DNS versus Cisco Umbrella and two factor and
Hmm.
Blackpoint, all these other things. We understand that. So we'll do the analysis. We'll then work with the MSP to say, listen, Keith, at NetV Pro, you got a couple of customers that are, a little light on security controls. Let's have you deploy some controls first. And then once we're satisfied with the level of security maturity, we'll go and say, okay, we'll shop the markets in the insurance world. So we're not a
Hmm.
carrier, we're a broker. We're going to help you identify the right carrier to work with.
Right.
We'll quote out the policy and then we'll help place the policy in the organization.
So
And
you
I
work
think
with an inventory of carriers, and
that's right.
you help pair the business with that carrier.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
And some of the carriers we work with, actually, most of the carriers we work with, they're MSP friendly.
Mm-hmm.
There are carriers out there that are building their own
Mm-hmm.
security teams
Mm-hmm.
now. You may know this, right? They're building their own SOC services. They're becoming an MSSP. They're deploying their own MDR, EDR tools. Those are
Mm-hmm.
challenging because if an MSP has to work with a carrier that has their own security teams, that
Mm-hmm.
revenue goes away from the MSP then,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because then
Mm-hmm.
they're not the ones selling it. So
Mm-hmm.
we prefer to work with traditional insurers that understand the division of responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Insurance handles the
Mm-hmm.
insurance side, transfer of financial risk. The
Mm-hmm.
MSP has to handle the security stack. Everything has to go to the MSP. That's what we do. So we're not a carrier, we're a broker, and we help identify the right carrier to work with in those specific
Mm-hmm.
use cases.
And you work with MSPs, and is that and you work with MSPs to help provide the insurance for their customers or for the MSP?
For both. So
For
we
both.
call it protecting the house, right? So
Mm-hmm.
NetV Pro, we want to go in and make sure you guys
Mm-hmm.
have the right insurance
Mm-hmm.
liability, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you also have the
Mm-hmm.
right E&O insurance. Let's protect the house. Once that's set, then we understand, all right, NetV Pro, you're selling, 15 security controls. Which of your clients have which controls? And then we just go down the path of helping your customers
Mm-hmm.
access the
Mm-hmm.
right insurance so that when a
Mm-hmm.
breach happens,
Mm-hmm.
it's not NetV Pro that gets blamed for stuff because you
Mm-hmm.
did everything you could. We
Right.
give you guys, the MSPs, a seat at that insurance table. So it's not just a bad mouthing of the MSP during an incident. We all work
Right.
together, right? And it makes it a
Right.
cohesive process.
Right. What happens when you encounter a business, so not an MSP, but an MSP's customer that maybe has a little bit of a different approach or a different need relative to security? So, in other words, you have your classic business people sitting in a cube farm having access to data, company data, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
I've run into a couple cases where it's a business. Um, they have a few people who do that. Maybe they have an accounting department that has some access to banking information, and they have, some people that have a little bit of access to, what we would consider critical info. But
Yep.
they also have a large population of users who don't have access to those kind of critical pieces of information. They're kind of line workers. They might have a Microsoft 365 account for occasional use, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
Maybe they're a little bit more resistant to having heavy duty security implementations and those types of things, but they still are interested in the insurance. Um,
Yep.
that's a non-traditional, maybe a little bit of a difficult
Hmm.
customer to work with. How do you guys approach working with a customer like that who maybe
Yep.
is the one of the things I run into is we're just a small company in central Minnesota. Nobody
Yeah.
cares about us. So how do
Hear that
you
every day.
do you kind of take a little bit of a consultative approach with the
Yes.
security controls and help that MSP maybe educate their customers?
Absolutely. So we become an extension of the MSP. We
Hmm.
fly the MSP's flag and the colors,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And at the end of the day, the MSP owns that client relationship because they've been in the trenches working with them for however many months or years.
Hmm.
And you're not unique in bringing this up, where
Hmm.
customers, and I'm talking to some of you business leaders that are listening that are not MSPs,
Right.
are resistant or hesitant
Hmm.
because of the cost of a premium, right? We're not
Hmm.
JP Morgan. We're
Hmm.
not Home Depot. It's not going to happen to
Hmm.
us. That's a false reality because Home Depot and JP Morgan have billions of dollars of funding that they could use with their very large security teams. And if they
Hmm.
get hit with a breach, they can afford to spend millions of dollars to solve the problem. Small companies, we don't have millions of dollars to put in to
Hmm.
recover ourselves when there's a breach, right? So every company is going to have different levels of security
Hmm.
requirements. Financial companies, healthcare companies, legal firms, right? They may have more scrutiny because they're regulated by third parties, or they may have access to sensitive
Hmm.
information that a marketing company or a bakery, right, or
Hmm.
some other uh,
Hmm.
security protocol company may have. And to address these types of companies that maybe don't see the value in it, you don't need to have every security control
Hmm.
to access cyber insurance. Just know that the less controls you have, the more riskier you look to an insurance carrier.
Hmm.
How do they
Hmm.
manage that? They just charge you more premium. There
Hmm.
are two right now, as of 2025, that are absolutely necessary for anyone to even look at you, right? It's two-factor authentication
Hmm.
across all your accounts.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
then you have to have some type of backups that are
Right.
offline or cloud-based or immutable, right? Where they can't be
Right.
modified once they're stored.
Hmm.
That's like the basic floor. If you don't
Hmm.
have those, there is no
Right.
carrier,
Right.
Keith, that's going to come and say, we're going to write a policy for you. So that's
Right.
very low hanging fruit. That will change as the market gets tougher, right? As insurance gets harder to access because there's more breaches happening.
Hmm.
Carriers will then say, you know what? It's not just two-factor authentication and backups. You got to have security awareness training. You got to have an EDR. You got to have an IT provider that, can do an annual security audit, right? You have to have
Hmm.
application whitelisting. You got to have web DNS protection. So these are going to get harder. So those
Right.
companies that don't have all the controls, you may be able to access a carrier that'll write the policy. Just know you might pay 5 to 10 times more for a premium because
Right.
you're seen as more
Right.
risky.
Right. Very good. Very good information. Um, do you help an MSP or help a customer? So let me take a step back. I drive a pickup. I have
Mm-hmm.
a Super Duty Ford pickup, and what I've found is that you can spend as much on pickups as you want to. Like
Yeah,
there is no limit to what you could spend on a truck. Similarly, I find that with security, you can spend as much on security as you want to, right? There's a product for everything and three products for most. So, in that, knowing that that landscape exists, do you help educate a customer on those things they can do that are, I call it blocking and tackling, those things they can do that are simple and meaningful within their own policies that they don't necessarily need to buy a tool for, but they should have security controls around, such as password changes and things like that. Do you help a customer understand those simple yet meaningful things in their space that they can do that they may or may not have to buy a product for?
absolutely. We don't
Right.
need every customer of every MSP to have every single control that the MSP sells. It's just not realistic,
Right.
right? And your example of, we all have those kiosk Microsoft 365 emails or the
Right.
exchange only licenses
Right.
that are like $4 or $5 a month,
Right.
where it's a person in the field that just needs it because there's a SharePoint folder that they got to access. And the only way they can do it is if they have a basic license.
Yeah.
That person in the field probably
Yeah.
doesn't need an EDR, an MDR, and everything Fort
Right.
Knox related,
Right.
right? So part of our responsibility and our commitment to MSPs is how do we share this security knowledge with customers so we
Right.
find a good balance between secure enough and
Right.
risk that's managed enough for a carrier, right?
Right.
So it doesn't mean every control. So each customer is going to be on a case by case basis. You have to look at what type of data do you have access to, what type of industry are you working in, what type of people work for your company, right?
Right.
What's your history of breaches? Are you really secure and you're really
Right.
disciplined, or have you had instances in the past where you're transferring a few $1,000 without calling someone on a
Right.
known phone number?
Right.
So it really depends on the client. And our commitment is we are not an MSP. We're not an MSSP.
Mm.
We have zero desire to do any implementation on stuff. But
Right.
we want our MSP partners to do all that stuff. So jumping on calls with their account managers, their sales teams, their marketing teams to do joint calls to
Right.
educate the customer is a win for everybody, because an educated customer understands value. They
Right.
spend money with their MSP. They're good risk appetite for carriers, and they make a broker's job easier because they're responsive and they answer questions. When they don't get educated on stuff, we can't get mad at them because we're not showing them the right way to be cyber secure, right? So
It,
sitting with these MSP partners and sharing this knowledge, I'm a
right.
big believer. A rising tide raises all ships, Keith. So if
hmm
we can share the knowledge, we all win, because then threats are kept out of the
Right.
organization that we protect.
It it feels like an important role to me that you play um, because what I see, I call it fear porn. All too often, well, all too often, managed services
Yeah,
providers introduce the werewolves in a closet, right? And
right.
what I'm finding is in the business people that I talk to, it's like they're they're burdened, like they're overwhelmed by it. It's almost too much information. The use of fear porn to scare them at every time, at every turn is almost too much, right? So what
Yeah,
happens is they get overloaded and then they don't take action, right? Because it's too much.
yeah.
So do you find that people embrace your input as maybe a third party who's not trying to sell them a specific tool, but rather helping them develop
Yeah.
a common sense plan to their security to manage for their security to manage the threat landscape?
An excellent question. I'm glad
Yeah,
you frame it up this way,
yeah.
because putting on my MSP hat for a second, I could yell at my customers about getting a certain security control for 6 months and they're just not going to buy it. But the
hmm
moment a trusted third party comes in and verbatim repeats the same
hmm
words that I've been saying,
hmm
customers are like, oh, yeah, actually, you know what? We should probably consider it. So, yes,
Right.
sometimes just human psychology, right? My wife says this all the time. She's like, I could tell you something for a year, you won't listen. But the moment your buddy or someone else says it, all of a sudden you're like all about that topic. I'm like, that's totally right. So,
Right.
helping our customers and understanding why security is important, the
hmm
fear mongering, the fear porn part of it a little bit, you have to tell that to some customers that just don't get it,
hmm
right? So there's some that you
hmm
just have to release the werewolves on.
hmm
Most are reasonable and they understand it. Some need
Right.
that extra
Right.
push, but the goal is to help them understand why it's important. And Keith, I'll tell you more and more what's happening in the industry. There will be a point in time in the not so distant future where you will have to have a cyber insurance policy to do business. You will
hmm
have to do it to have access to vendors.
hmm
You'll need it to get access to customers that you want to sign.
Yep.
There are RFPs that you might be filling out that require a certificate of insurance to even be considered as part of an applicant,
hmm
right? So that's
Right.
changing, right? So the sooner we can get on board with this
Right.
need and using insurance as maybe a driver for revenue or a
Right.
driver for better security or a driver for risk protection, then you remove that fear conversation and it just
Right.
becomes a cost of doing business. That opens the door up a lot easier for people.
Yeah. I think having a third party such as yourselves to lend credibility is helpful because one of the things that I in past lives I've been a VP of IT. I've procured the services that I sell now, right? So I've been on the
Yep.
other side of the table, similar to you, been on the other
Yep.
side of the table. And one of the challenges is that as you talk to different MSPs, right, they'll tell you that their product stack is the best in the world until it isn't, right? And that's one of the challenges that I see is, a managed services provider comes in and goes, well, this is the best tool for email protection until it's not, and then the next tool
Right.
is the best tool for email protection. So I think there's value in having somebody in a role such as yours to come in and help maybe cut through a little bit of that and help the business feel better about what they're doing relative to their security posture.
Absolutely. And
So
we're not here to have to sell security to
right,
everybody all the time, but just enough where the risk is managed. We get an
right,
appropriate policy. And then when stuff happens, and it will for everybody, do you
right,
have the appropriate things in place, the appropriate teams, the
right.
structure, incident response, plan to recover? Because the name of the game now is not prevention. They're going to get in. If
Right,
someone has enough
right.
time and enough money, they're
That
going to get in.
that is a very important statement right there.
Yeah.
That it's not really a question of if. Moats don't work anymore, right? Moats don't
No,
protect the palace anymore, and it's
people can
really,
jump across. Yeah,
and I think there's a secret sauce really in talking about recovery and how fast you can
absolutely.
recover and limiting the scope of anything that might
Yep.
happen. That actually leads me into a point that while you were talking occurred to me, and that is if a business experiences, I'm just going to say an event. I'm not going to use the word breach yet. I'm going to use the word event. Does that knock them out of contention, not contention, but does that make it so they can't get insurance coverage? And now I'm using the term event, and we can dig into that a little bit more, but just
Yep.
having an event, does that mean they can't get coverage?
Not necessarily true, because an event could mean $1,000 wire transfer on a fraudulent invoice by accident.
Mm-hmm,
That's not really a major incident, right? It requires
mm-hmm,
remediation and recovery efforts, maybe a
mm-hmm,
slap on the wrist to say, hey, Sally from accounting, let's be sure we follow our accounting process and call the CFO on a known phone number before you release any wires, right?
mm-hmm,
So, not necessarily. And then, from an insurance standpoint, in the insurance applications that we fill out to carriers,
mm-hmm,
you do have to disclose if you've had incidents in the past, regardless
mm-hmm,
of their severity. But that
mm-hmm,
doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be denied coverage. What's worse, and there are some companies out there that intentionally misrepresent information in applications. That is a big no-no, because if you misrepresent that you've never had an incident and then 6 months later something does happen, and this is called, the forensic folks that come in from
mm-hmm,
carriers are the DFIR, the digital forensics and incident response. When they come in
mm-hmm,
and they go through everything with a fine tooth comb, they
mm-hmm,
may find remnants of a previous incident. They may invalidate the policy and say you misrepresented yourself and we underwrote risk based on the assumption that you didn't have any incidents in the past. However, you do have an incident from the past that we've discovered, and that may
mm-hmm,
have led to this future incident. The
right,
claim might not get approved right away because now there's an extra due diligence process. So
right,
just because you've had an incident, that doesn't mean it's a black mark and that no one's going to ever insure
right,
you. You
right,
just have to be able to explain what happened, how did you rectify it, how did you remediate and prevent this from hopefully happening in the future. You may pay a little bit more in premium just because you have that on your record,
mm-hmm,
but it's better to pay that extra percentage on a premium and know that a carrier is aware of what happened versus misrepresenting an
right,
application, hoping nobody finds out. And they will. Forensic folks find out everything. They'll find out, and then you may get the claim denied altogether. And
right,
maybe you're out of pocket for the $600,000 ransom you got to
right,
pay now to unlock your files, right? So you have to be really truthful and mindful of how you answer those, because those are legal documents. Insurance applications are legal documents. You can get
mm-hmm.
sued if you misrepresent yourself.
Right, right. So this question is for people who are working in MSPs more so than business. If you're working with a customer and that customer wants you to help them with their insurance application or their insurance information forms, um, and they ask you to put something that they ask you to sign off on something that maybe is somewhat less than true or maybe takes some liberties with the truth. Um, uh, that seems like a bad idea to Keith. Keith
Yep.
Keith doesn't like those types of things. I've had
Yep.
that happen before, and I've refused to do it. Um, but yeah, I would say that the truth is the most important piece of these things, isn't it? It's never good to have a bad surprise later after a policy is written, right?
100%. If you're an MSP and your customer is telling you to misrepresent or lie on an insurance application, do not sign that insurance application because that is a legal document. Carriers will hold you as the
And
MSP accountable. You may not get
yeah,
indemnified when something happens. That is
yeah,
very thin ice to walk on.
yeah,
And I would seriously reconsider that client relationship. Not all
right,
revenue is good revenue, okay, at an
right,
MSP. I
right,
would seriously reconsider if there is a customer wanting you to do something that misrepresents who they are
right.
just for the sake of saving some money. Imagine what they're doing to you if they're making you do that for the insurance folks, you know?
Right, right. And just out of curiosity, if as an individual working for a managed service provider, if I knowingly provide false information, do I have any personal ownership over that
You could, you could,
falsification?
you
I
could,
think I
depending
think
on
we
how
should
your
all be
MSP is
aware of that.
structured. So if you're a
So
technician or someone, if you're working the help desk and you get this insurance application, whether you're in ConnectWise, AutoTask, whatever system you're using, and you are
right,
unsure, and a client is pressuring you because the renewal's tomorrow at 8 a.m. and it's 3:30 p.m. the day before, you got to get a response in, and you're unsure what to do. You don't know the judgment call to make.
hmm,
Escalate it to your company leadership. Tell them this is what the client is asking us to do.
right,
Let the leadership make the call on the decision on what needs to happen. You as a individual, right? Maybe you're a non-owner or a
hmm,
minority owner in a company. You shouldn't be making those judgment calls
right,
because once you write it and sign it, it is bound. It's there, and you can't change that answer unless you requote and redo the policy. So my
right.
recommendation for all that are watching that are not in a managerial or leadership role,
Hmm.
you get pressured by a customer, just pump the brakes, go to leadership and ask them for guidance. Let them make the decision and handle the customer interaction after that.
And in my past, and having spent a lot of time filling out these kinds of forms,
Mm-hmm.
having it be my life for the past few years, is that I always, if there's something I don't understand or if there's a bit of gray area, I always reach out to I guess I'm going to say carrier in this case, but to the insurance company to get clarification on those questions. Point of point of my statement here is that if you have questions about it, it's okay to ask them to clarify, correct?
Totally. You
Yeah,
don't have to be, and
what do you mean by this?
give us clarity. It's much better to ask
Yeah,
for clarity because the carrier will appreciate it, the client will appreciate it, the MSP is
right.
going to be safer from that.
Well,
And not everyone knows insurance
yeah,
lingo. It's confusing. Every carrier is different, right?
that's also
So
a great
working with,
point. You just made a great point, and that is
yeah,
by asking that question, now I've established a relationship with somebody at that carrier. So now
absolutely.
we're both people to each other, and
Yep.
we can have conversations. I think you made a very
Yeah.
good point there about establishing that communication channel. So if there's questions or
Yeah.
if there's ever a problem, it's easy to have that discussion. Yeah,
There's no embarrassment. Carriers are not going to judge you and laugh at you.
right,
Like they know that people don't. Carriers wish more people would ask them questions versus
right,
inadvertently misrepresenting answers on an application.
right,
That's what we do at Rhone, right? So we help customers answer those questions as well.
right.
As brokers, we understand what carriers want. We can say it in plain English, in layman terms, and then we can help you determine whether the answer on the application is truthful or
Hmm.
not, because we'll validate whether the control actually exists, right? So that's
Right.
really the importance of working with a broker or a insurance agency that is cyber and IT aware. Not
Hmm.
every broker, not every agency understands technology. They just throw in the cyber policies. I'm just generalizing. They throw it in and they
Hmm.
get it signed and they're good to go. You have to work with someone that's cyber savvy and IT savvy that understands
Right.
why the questions are being asked.
I'm going to ask you a question about a topic that I think frequently gets overlooked as far as its impact, and that is on a business providing training to its employees. How important, from an insurance perspective, is it that a business provide security training to its employees, or avail the training to their employees for
Yeah.
security related items?
That's music to my ears because
Mm.
cybersecurity is a team sport. It's a shared responsibility. It's not the CEO or the C suite's responsibility for every employee to ensure that they follow good security practices. We have to train ourselves, right? Just like if you want to run a 26.2 mile marathon, you're not just going to wake up one day and run.
Yeah.
Maybe some of you will, but
Yeah.
you're not running 26 miles in one go. You're training
Yeah.
for a
I
year,
really
right?
had to train for my last marathon, Sagar.
It takes time.
I,
It takes time. It takes time, right? To do that stuff. So security awareness training is very important because
mm-hmm.
now you're creating a culture of shared responsibility. And I yell about this on LinkedIn all the time if you follow me, where cybersecurity is not just the responsibility of one person or the MSP. The
Mm-hmm.
customer needs to own it.
Yeah.
Everyone's got to be
It's a
involved in the
culture.
practice of it. It's a
It's a
culture,
culture.
right?
It
And
is
the
a
more we
culture.
build that culture, the more quickly we'll be able to identify a phishing attempt or a threat,
Right.
the more we have time to solve it, and we minimize the need to even file a claim in the first place because we stop it immediately, right?
The
So
training,
carriers would love it.
yep, the training piece feels important to me because not all threats are generated by machines or those types. It's not necessarily targeted malicious actors coming straight at you. A lot of times it's people related challenges, right? There's social engineering going on.
Yeah,
An employee clicked on a link. They didn't recognize that this was the email address was one letter off, right? So
yeah,
that
yeah,
security training really helps shore up the weakest link, which is humans. All too often we think about
100%.
security just being machines and automating the whole thing, but the humans are very important in the whole process. So,
Ransomware gets all the limelight in the media
mm-hmm,
and all the stories, even though ransomware is like less than 10% of security incidents. The bigger thing is business email compromise, BEC. It's
yep,
exactly what you talked about, Keith, where employees get tricked. And these are not
mm-hmm,
like threat actors from like nation state sponsored
right,
hacking groups overseas. These are just people that just want to make extra money and they decided they want to just cause havoc to your company, and you
yep,
click a link and you accidentally wire over $2,500 or $20,000. That's the
yep,
bigger deal right now, business email compromise. So if we put in two-factor authentication, security training, backups, that helps alleviate some of those challenges and it keeps money out of the hands of the criminals, right?
right,
And it's super important. So I think we need to give more attention to business email compromise because that's where most stuff comes from. It's not
yep,
hacking your firewall and bringing your system down. There is that too, but it's
mm-hmm,
primarily just tricking
yep,
people
people,
psychologically to click
tricking
and
people.
download stuff. Yeah,
Yep,
that's
yep,
it.
exactly, exactly. Very good. Well, we're getting close to the end of our time here, and I guess before we end things, I would like to tell
Yeah,
people how they can get a hold of you. So if they wanted to get a hold of you, if they wanted to check out the business a little bit, what are those social media and internet uh, contact pieces?
absolutely. So our website is Rhone Risk, RHONERISK.com.
Okay.
Find me on LinkedIn. It's Sagar Pandya. I'm the first one. I'm very noisy about cyber and all
Mm-hmm.
things
Mm-hmm.
insurance. Love to connect with you and DM me if you want to chat,
Mm-hmm.
or you can email me SP, so my initials at RhoneRisk.com.
Okay.
I'm an MSP friendly, MSP veteran. I just want to share knowledge with you
Right.
guys. And I hope
Right.
that this podcast gave you some knowledge to have really resilient risk management
Right.
conversations with your customers. And Keith, I can't thank you
Right.
enough for having me on today.
Right. Well, no, appreciate it. And I will say that in my personal experience, you've been great to talk to and very informative. And even offline here, you've been very very informative and good to talk to. Out of curiosity, I'm a user of X. Do you have a Twitter or an X account that you post to on occasion or no?
I do. So,
What?
Hey Sagar Pandya is all of my handles, right?
Okay.
Hey, and then my first and last name on Instagram, on TikTok, on X, on LinkedIn, on Facebook. You can find me everywhere. I'm
Okay.
posting on Substack. I'm everywhere, Keith.
That's
So
awesome.
it'll be easy to find me
Yep,
online.
yep. I'll actually check that out. So very good.
Cool.
Well, thank you very much for your time today. Super informative. And again, we'll put the links out there so people can get a hold of you one way or another, follow you on X, etc. So
I appreciate it, Keith. Thanks
very
so
good,
much, man.
Sager. Thank you very much. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Yep.